Hi there! Welcome to Built Not Bought by Bruce. So, now that we know a little bit about AN fittings and hose and tools, let's jump into doing some plumbing on the Sportster here. I thought what we'd do today is we'd start with the main oil line that goes from the tank down to the pump. And I've got a second camera set up here. I'm going to try and show you some things. I'm going to try and make this video efficient, do it quickly. But I still want to show you some of the details and the process that I work through. So let's get started on it here. So first things first, I mentioned before that inside diameter for flow was important. This, and I can show you on this camera, this is the original fitting for the input side of the oil pump. So what I did with this fitting, it was typical for a hose and worm clamp, and I was trying to figure out how to get onto that oil pump. So I tried a compression fitting, and I talked about these before. So this has a ferrule, I'm going to show you over here. So this has a ferrule, that brass ferrule in there. And it slides over, actually let me put this together properly. So the fitting, once you remove the ball on the end, which I ground away on my belt grinder, you put the ferrule over the end, push it in there. It's a little bit sticky there right now, but you push it in, put this side together, it compresses the ferrule, and that puts pressure on the tube and creates a seal. And of course that's brass, so it's soft and it all works out. So that was my initial thought to making the original fitting work. Reason I wanted to use the original fitting is, again, what I started with was, I was talking about flow and inside diameter. So the inside diameter on this is 0.260. So a little over 1/4 of an inch. And I think that's important on the input side of the pump. Reason being, there's no pressure or anything to push the oil on the input side. The only pressure you have is the pressure of gravity, and I tried to look up a formula for this, and boy, it's complicated. But anyway, all you have is the pressure of the volume of oil in the tank pushing it with gravity down to the pump. So there really is no pressure on that side of the pump, I don't think. So when I took an AN fitting, a -6 to 1/8 national pipe taper, when I grabbed a fitting, I measured the inside diameter and found that it was only 0.19, and 0.19 versus 0.260, I thought it might restrict the input to the pump, and I didn't want to get a situation of cavitation in the pump or something like that. You certainly don't want to restrict the flow into the input side of the pump. So I thought about it, and I worked on it, and I knew there was a solution, but I really didn't want to do it. I checked steel fittings, inside diameter on them. They're not a lot better. Anyway, bottom line is I finally had to do what I really didn't want to do. And I took this over to the drill press, and I got it held down in the vise on the drill press. And you might be able to see in there, I was able to drill this 45-degree fitting out to 1/4 inch. So I'm 0.25. The original one's 0.26. I think I'm going to be okay flow-wise. I think that should do the trick. We're going to monitor pressure and make sure that the pump's behaving properly. But I think that small difference is probably not going to be a problem. So now that I had a 45 here, I'm just going to put this into the input side of the pump. And these can be a little bit tricky when you're working with an angle. Now what I like about this And I will tell you, I'm a bit of a, I don't know, Karen says I'm, anal. But anyway, I'm fussy about this kind of stuff because I like things to be serviceable. So this fitting, I wanted one that I could put in and take out without having to remove anything else here, which I can. The reason the compression fitting, by the way, didn't work is the length of it would hit up on this piece. So I couldn't get a thread on, I couldn't get a hose on it, I couldn't get it started. And there was just no way to get an angle on it or anything because, when this was assembled, it was basically that length. So there's just no way to work around it. So I went with the 45, drilled it out. That gets me away from the engine here. And then I used a 45-degree -6 fitting. And let me just see, sorry for bumping the camera there. Oh, and there's Karen walking in on my video. It's okay. What do you need?
No, I was just gonna, I'm off.
You're off? Okay, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
So, with that 45 on there, that does a really nice job. And I like 45-degree fittings because you can do a lot of playing with the angle. So now the angle I have comes straight out and runs along the frame tube. So I'm really happy with the way that worked out. Going to be a little bit tricky to get this positioned. As you probably saw when I threaded it in, it's just starting to get tight there now. To crank that all the way around to get the right angle, I'm not sure that it's going to go, so I may have to use some tape, some Teflon tape on the threads there to get it to tighten up a little bit earlier and seal up so that I get the right angle. I'll have to see, I'll mark the angle on the pump that I want to get on this fitting, and I'll see if I can tighten it up to that point. That's the problem I find with national pipe taper threads is, if you're getting tight, but it's not tight at the point where you really want it, to get one more turn out of it can be a real challenge. So anyway, we're going to make that work. That's fine. So I'm really happy with the way this worked out here, or the way it's going to work out. So next, as I told you before, I'm using this T. I just want to make sure that's in the camera. Yes, it is. So I'm using this T fitting. And what I want to do is be able to drain the oil. And when I go to change the oil, it'll be in that orientation. Just take that off. The oil is going to drain right out. I'm going to make sure it's not hitting on any part of the frame or anything, and it should be fine. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to run a piece of hose here. And that will, what that'll do is that's going to get us to this 90, which turns and then goes across, and you can see that the cap will clear the frame tube on the other side. So with it clearing the frame tube, it's going to be easy to just get in there with a socket, take that off. I like the way it's going to be held. It should all work out pretty good. And that's, while we're at this point, I'll just talk about that for a second. So bikes are a real challenge. I find it a real challenge anyway, to keep them neat and tidy with the hose and everything else. You wind up using a lot of fittings because you're trying to get angles. You need tight angles. You need things to happen. On the race car, and I'll show you some of the plumbing on the race car. The race car is easy because you got a line running from the fuel tank to the pump that is, I don't know, almost 5 feet long. Well, that line, you can make some nice gradual bends, tie it to the chassis in places, to the frame. It's really easy to use hose in that situation. Here it gets a lot tougher because I'm trying to avoid having a hose that's sitting up against an edge and chafing, you know, rubbing on an edge. You know, this hose up here, for example, is up against the forward control. It's a smooth surface, it's not hurting it, you know, the hose hasn't worn there or anything, but it's just, to me, it's not tidy, it's not a nice look, it's gonna wear the chrome where it's rubbing there all the time. I want this to be tidier than that. So that's what I'm working on. So what we need to do is we need to mark a piece of hose here. And if I hold this back up in place again, I know that I want to be right about there. There's a plate at the back. So I want the front edge of this fitting to be right at this piece of metal. So if I take my hose, and I'm just using a chalk marker here, that's the bad end. So this is -6 nylon braided black hose from Vibrant Performance. So that, you have to remember when you're measuring these, that hose is going to go into that nut. You don't want to measure from here because you've got another 1/2 to 5/8 of an inch that you have to go in there. Now, this isn't super critical, but we know the end of the nut was about there, so another 5/8 of an inch or so should put us right there. So I put a white mark on the hose. I know where I want that. The nice thing in here is it's not critical. It can be a little bit forward, a little bit back. It really doesn't matter. What I like about what's happening here, and just to give you an idea, and I'll try and get a better shot of this, we will as we build more hose, but I'm going to go across. I'm going to have a 45 on the other side to probably a 90, and up to the tank, and I have a 45 at the tank. So the oil flow is going to be down the hose, across under here. This is real nice because that hose is protected by the frame, it's protected by the transmission. This is a nice safe spot to have that drain and everything. It's not going to get bumped or chewed or anything like that. And it totally stays away from the chain. I had looked, I thought about different ways of maybe running the hose up here. Just wasn't happy, and if it hit the chain and wore through, that'd be a bad day. So this is really tidy, really nice the way it's going through there. I'm pretty happy with it. So let's go over to the bench, now that we've marked the hose, and we'll actually put one of these together.